was thinking I wanted to talk to you about how I personally really try to maximize like 0% interest. This is for those of you who already are able to pay off your credit card, because what I don't want you to do is get into huge amounts of debt. So this is very, very important, okay? And who are able to make payments on time. You're not struggling with like massive debt, because credit card debts, like the interest rate on credit cards, are just astronomical. It makes absolutely no sense then for you to put something on a credit card where you're paying 20+% interest rate and then try to basically follow this method that I use. So this is something I personally do. So for example, when we purchased my SUV, I had the option of paying it off in cash, like paying it with cash, right? Or I had the option of, there was basically 0% interest for 5 years, right? And so I actually opted for 0% interest for 5 years. And the reason I did that was because for me at the time, especially because this was during like shortly after the pandemic, so interest rates that were being paid on like savings account was about 4.5%, right? Again, I really don't like saying interest rates because they change all the time. So my interest on my savings was compounding at 4.5%, or I can take that 25K and like just pay it off, but then now I'm not getting the compounding for the interest of that savings. And so for me, anytime like I'm thinking for my car, it's always important for me to make sure that I have a good amount in my savings. So everyone's savings is always going to be different, but for me it's always, okay, if I tap into my savings, then I lose out on all that interest, right? Especially a high yield savings account. The same thing when it came to the roof on the rental that we had to replace, is either, okay, do we just take the savings from that rental and just pay off the roof, or do we go with 0% interest? And so that way our money continues to work for us. And so for me, it always goes back to like, how can I find ways for my money to work harder? How can I stretch that? And so the more you get into like just thinking through those things, and then you can always if you have questions, you can ask as well. But for me, it's always, okay, so the choice between paying off my roof now versus like 0% interest, and again, this is something that needed to be replaced, and then not pulling out of my savings account when it's already, it's a high yield savings account. It made more sense to go with like 0% financing, just so that way I could basically, it's cheap money. At the end of the day, that's what wealthy like people just know to do, is how to utilize really cheap, that's what we call like very cheap money, where it's like, like even mortgages, where when money is considered cheap and you want to borrow again, you basically want to borrow because the money is so cheap to borrow, and especially when it's at 0% interest. And so that's what I personally do. Is we did that with my car, and we also did that with the roof, and also with the air conditioning as well. Is usually, especially when you have good credit, is when you have great credit, like I'm talking once you get over like the 700s going into like the 800s, you usually qualify for like 0% interest. And so for me, that's what I do. You absolutely don't have to do that, but that's what I do, and how I maximize. Like if I decide, oh, I'm going to tap into my savings, or I would decide, hey, I'm actually going to use a high yield savings, or I'm going to put that money into like a brokerage account, so that way I continue to have my money work for me. And so that's what we personally done as far as cars go, again, because it's 0% interest. And the same with the air air conditioning, the same with like repairs, things like that. Anywhere where we can tap into like 0%, we absolutely will. That's what my husband and I do, simply because we want our money to maximize. We want our money to be continue to grow, and where it grows for us is in a high yield savings account. It's going to go for us in, you know, your brokerage account when it's actually being invested. And so that's what we do to basically capitalize on 0% interest. And so I hope that was helpful, just something for you to think about, especially if you're considering doing like if you're thinking about you know, you need to get a new car or a used car, or you want to get repairs done around the home, especially like with your roof or like air conditioning. Or let's say you have your first rental and you're trying to think through, okay, how do I actually what are some ways for me to have my money continue to work for me? And then I'll talk a little bit more about our rental as well, and how we're able to make sure things are fixed and what we use. And so this is just more so just sharing what it is that we do to continue to make sure our money is working for us, versus using that money that's pulled from the savings when that money can continue growing, or using that money when it can actually be growing in like a brokerage account, or when it continues to be invested, or like on a 401k or a solo 401k. Is we always want to figure out how best to use the money. Okay, hope that was helpful.